adapted. I mean, I like the fact that maybe they changed what you say.
As a kid, I was really obsessed with the internet, and I just loved it. It was nerdy, but it was really fun. There's a lot of power in this space, and it can be a way to investigate, like a wider story.
You know, I also feel like it's important to always ask questions and kind of know that technology is never neutral.
Even thinking about how artists have used the internet and how much the internet has obviously like changed society. I think artists are putting themselves in the position to be critical thinkers and putting that into practice.
I feel like you gave a talk somewhere where you said something about manifesting and how your name is an example of this.
Why did you change your name?
I changed my name in 2013. At the time, I was not like a professional artist, and I had this thought that like, if I name myself that, then I am that. It just becomes factual. And I just got kind of obsessed with the idea, and then I just did it.
Did your family were like, this is crazy?
Yeah, kind of. My mom was pretty upset. My dad was just really confused.
And wait, did you tell them ahead of time?
No.
No.
I was fascinated with the idea of being able to change one's identity. That's something the internet allows people to do. With American artists, as much as it is a statement, it's also a placeholder of what could be. Deciding that I want to operate online with a certain amount of anonymity came around the time of this project, A Refusal. What do it mean to make a sort of conspicuous critique within the platforms when I started to use this solid blue image rather than my likeness online? Thinking about what it means to perform on the internet, that sort of naturally led into thinking about surveillance. This project really came from reading a lot of surveillance critique. In some ways, we're more implicated than ever, which makes it seem really impossible to completely disengage. I also began thinking about race within surveillance and what it means to operate online as a Black artist.
You're like, it's a way to reach people. And the fun part of it is figuring out, how do I actually speak to people?
To me, it's that power that is like, wait, things don't have to be like this.
The aspect of power, it feels very ripe to like play with that. And that's not even a matter of being surveyed by these large tech companies, but even by people who have access to my image on the internet. Seeing an intentional challenge to the internet, something visually that's happening in your feed, I think it does encourage people to question their relationship to how they are expected to perform socially online. With Dignity Images, I was thinking about the kind of power in images that you have that you don't post online or you don't share. Maybe it's just not valuable within social media, but it's super special to you, giving them some sort of power.
Yeah, there's something in that that kind of rhymes with my experience. I had a friend who died when I was really young, when I was in university, and we were on Facebook. It wasn't like the site had any protocol around it. People were fighting about whether her Facebook wall should be a place where you could write memorials. And I was like, oh, there's something happening here. I became attracted to this idea of the space where you can decide the terms rather than those terms already being fixed. I had just moved to a new neighborhood, and I was getting catcalled a lot. And I really didn't like how I would sometimes feel afterwards, but I don't want to go up and say anything to anyone. And so instead, I started doing this project, this intervention. Whenever somebody catcalled me, I would give people a phone number. They would think it was my phone number. It was not my phone number. I had set up this server. They would text it, and I had all these pre-programmed messages that would text their phone numbers. Then I would watch these messages unfold. I wanted to have a sense of agency, but I basically had inadvertently created a database of all my catcallers. Data is currency, even if you don't intend for it to be.
That makes me also think about your project, the Library of Missing Data Sets.
That project was right after Trayvon Martin had been killed. I typed in, where is a data set of civilians who have been killed by the police? And I realized I couldn't find it. It made me start thinking, well, what else can I not find? What other things are missing? The project became thinking about patterns of absence, which are really difficult to see. In any system, there's always a kind of hierarchy of what is perceived to be important. Something has to be absent. What isn't seen, or what isn't meant to be seen, just tells you something about what is prioritized. We trust in data. It's so seductive. If you have the data for something, then people are like, okay, now I can believe it. You have a sense of order. And so in my work, when I show what doesn't fit into that, what can't be put in, it's just a reminder. This is one way of knowing the world. It's not gonna work for everything.
There's sort of a seductive aspect of trying to quantify or rationalize like every part of the world that is like rooted in very particular cultures and mindsets.
I don't know if y'all have had this. Sometimes people will say, oh, like this work you're doing, it feels like it's very activist. And I'm like, well, actually, this is just facts. Yeah, like this is not activist, this part isn't. It's tied to both of your works. I think all of us are sort of picking away at the same thing.
Yeah, I got into the art world through writing, creative writing, and it was really just attached to wanting to tell the story of my grandmother's life, and that her story was the story of many other women of her generation, of that region. I think there is something about being able to trace things in the past and then speculate also the missing stories. So much of the work I do is about colonialism and imperialism. Growing up in Iran, I feel like it's just something I can never unsee. It's a legacy that is continuing with digital technologies. Digital colonialism is the power dynamics that extend from imperial colonial power structures into digital tools. Who gets to have ownership of certain data or archive or a story?
When you think about archives, there's this decision that happens before you even see it. And that is the decision you don't have any access to at all. And yet it's the decision that determines everything down the line.
That also was something that was a learning curve for me. I think that's why I like speculation. there is a story there that is not being told. And this is my version of imagining it. I always try to combine critical thinking with storytelling that are like personal and political, so that it's not just dry theory. And I feel like that's when it's powerful.
It is rooted in a sort of optimism. The fact that I'm even bothering to like do this work is because I feel like there's work to be done and it's worth doing.
I agree. It's clear that a lot of the world orders that we have inherited won't work. But that's the space where artists are most needed, because then we have to imagine, we have to speculate, like you said, about what else could be. And the moments in time I'm most inspired by are moments where it felt like for some people a world was ending. And then they came together and they were like, we get to decide what the terms of this new world are gonna be.